Hello everyone and welcome back to Study. Today we are going to learn about the important topic which is pupillary light reflex, right? So with the name you can understand that pupillary means the opening, right? So the black opening is the pupil that regulates the amount of light. So in our eye over here, so this is our eye, and over here we have a jet black opening. So this opening is basically the gap between the irises, right? So this is the pupil, and if I'll view it from the side, okay. So here is the iris, and this hollow space is the pupil. And what is the function of the pupil? It regulates the amount of light that enters the eye, right? So either the more amount has to go into the eye or less amount, so it regulates the amount of light that is entering the eye and thus reaching to the fovea or the macular region, right? So the function of the pupil is that it allows the light rays to enter the eye. So you all know that pupil is dilated. What does dilation of the pupil means? That the iris is contracted. So these iris is now contracted. So it means that these irises are contracted and the space between, or this space between these irises get broad, right? So this is a dilation when the pupil, so this is iris. So if these iris muscles of the iris get constricted, what happens? That the size of the pupil increases in order to allow more light to enter the eye, right? So, but when the muscle relaxes, what happens? That when the radial muscle relax, they'll allow the constriction of the pupil. So this is the opening from where the light rays enter the eye, right, which is pupil. Next we have the light reflex. So what does light reflex means? That when we show light to the eye, when a light is shown to the eye, what happens? So take a torch and throw the light of that torch into your eye and stand in front of the mirror. What will happen? You will notice that this jet black opening, which we say the pupil, will be in small size, will turn into the smaller size while you show light to your eye. So why is that so? It is because that it is only because when you throw the light onto the patient's eye, what will happen? There will be the constriction of the pupil, right? So when a light is shown to one eye and simultaneously the other eye gets constricted, so we can say it as simultaneous and equal, right? So simultaneous and equal constriction of the pupil, when the light is shown to, when light is shown to one eye, right? So this is the pupillary light reflex, which states that there will be the simultaneous and equal constriction of the pupil, of both the pupils, when light is shown onto one eye only. So again, stand in front of the mirror and throw light from the side or from the temporal side. So this is the nose, and throw the light from the temporal side to your one eye and notice the other eye as well, right? So notice your other eye. What will you observe? That when the light is shown on your one eye temporally, the eye at which you have thrown the light will constrict, or the pupil of that eye will constrict. But you will observe that simultaneously, on the other hand, the pupil of the second eye also constricts, right? Why is that so? Because our eyes are connected. At the back of our eye, the fibers are exchanged or onto other sides, and that is why our eyes are connected to each other, right? So when you will throw light onto one eye, there will be the equal and simultaneous constriction of the pupil of another eye as well. This is basically the pupillary light reflex. Now we are going to learn about pathway of the pupil of the light reflex, right? So you have to learn some important structures. I'm going to tell you a flow chart. Later we are going to discuss the pathway, right? So what happens when you throw light onto patient's one eye? Okay, so we are going to see when you throw light on patient's one eye. This is a normal size of the pupil, right? Which is approximately about 4 millimeters. But now you have thrown the light onto patient's eye. So the first step is light stimulus, right? So first step is light stimulus enters the eye. So you observe the light stimulus. So what will happen, this light stimulus is thrown, or you got a stimulus of light, and pupil allows this light to enter. So this is our eye, and here is the pupil in the normal size, and light hits the fovea, right? So what happens that when the light stimulus is over there, the optic nerve over here gets signaled, right? So signals from photoreceptor are gone to the optic nerve structure. So the second structure is optic nerve. You got a light stimulus. As the light stimulus enters the eye, optic nerve gets innervated that there is a light stimulus, right? So optic nerve carries the information about this light, right? So optic nerve is carrying the light information. So here you have to remember that VL signals, VL fibers, light fibers, both are traveling in the optic nerve. VL fiber means that the fibers that are carrying the information about the image. So VL fibers will show you the image, while light fibers are just for the constriction of the pupil. So the light fibers will tell you that there is a light entering in the eye, and that should be regulated. So pupil should have to regulate this light amount, that how much amount should enter the eye. So when you got a light stimulus, the optic nerve gets innervated, and both VL fibers and light fibers are traveling in the optic nerve. So in the optic nerve, at the back side, the optic nerve of one eye and the optic nerve of the other eye are meeting at a single point, which is the optic chiasm, right? Optic chiasm, where the nasal fibers, that is all about different concept, that is VL pathway concept. In that we have discussed that what is optic chiasm. So I am going to tell you that it is a common structure where the nasal fiber of both the eyes pass on to another side, right? So nasal fibers of the left eye will move towards the right eye, and nasal fibers of right eye will move toward the left side, right? So from here there will be the crossing over or decussation of the nasal fibers, right? So optic chiasm is there. Then we have the just after the optic chiasm we have the optic tract, right? Okay, so after this, so third structure is optic chiasm, fourth structure is optic tract, right? We are discussing the pupillary light reflex and not the VL pathway. Light reflex pathway is that where the light fibers that are going to tell you or inform the eye that there the light is entering the eye, so how much light should be regulated, how much light should enter. So that reflex is different in a, it has a different pathway, while the wheel pathway is something different, right? So I hope you got it, that the pathway we are going to discuss in this video is the light pathway. So light fibers are moving where? So we are going to study here that where the light fibers are going, right? So now what happens in a normal wheel pathway is that this optic nerve, we have the optic nerve, then there is decussation where the nerve fibers get crossed over, and then we have the optic tract, then there is a lateral geniculate body, right, where the wheel fibers are going, and then there are optic radiations, then there are the optic radiations, and then eventually they go into the visual cortex, right? So this is a visual pathway. But what happens with the light fibers? So here the visual fibers are moving just so that the image can be processed and viewed in the visual cortex. But over here we are talking about the light fibers. So light fibers are those fibers that will tell you that when they get innervated, they will tell you that how much amount of light should be regulated. So they will innervate the muscles of the iris, right? So they will tell the muscles of the iris to constrict or relax in order to regulate the amount of light that is entering the pupil, right? So what happens to the light fibers? So over here we have eyes, two eyes, right? We have the two eyes. There is the optic nerve. Then we have the common point, that is the optic chiasm. After optic chiasm we have optic tract, right? So this is optic nerve, this is optic chiasm, this is the optic tract, and here we have the lateral geniculate bodies, right? So the fibers, so here are the fibers. These fibers in the optic nerve are both light and visual fibers, right? So optic nerve carries both of the fibers, light and visual fibers, right? So light fibers for the amount of regulation in so that how much amount should enter the eye, and visual fibers will tell you about the image. So they will both go into the optic chiasm, then they will enter the optic tract, visual fibers and light fibers, right? But over here at the level of the lateral geniculate body, what will happen that the visual fibers will move towards the lateral geniculate body, right? So visual fibers will travel towards the lateral geniculate body, but the light fibers will move to the posterior side, right? They will move to the posterior side towards the midbrain in the pretectal nuclei, right? So what light fibers do? They will move towards the pretectal nuclei that lies in the midbrain, right? So the light fibers, the visual fibers will move toward the lateral geniculate body, while the light fibers will get separated and move posteriorly towards the midbrain and will reach the pretectal nuclei. And at the level of pretectal nuclei, this is all about the sensory information. So sensory information is going from the sensory organ, that is eye, from eye towards the brain. So now this is the afferent pathway, right? So afferent pathway is that when you sense it and you send the signals to the brain. So sensory information is sent to the brain at this level. So this is the first order neuron. where the information has been reached from eye to the brain, right? So at the level of pretectal nuclei, the information, the motor signals will start innervating, right? So at the level of pretectal nuclei, motor information or motor signals are carrying from pretectal nuclei towards the third cranial nerve, right? So third cranial nerve nuclei, which is basically Edinger-Westphal nucleus, right? So from the pretectal nuclei, the signals, the motor information has been moved, signals have been transformed from pretectal nuclei. The motor information now the response is to be carried out. So sensory information have been there onto the at the level of brain. Now from brain the response is going to be happened. So now from the pretectal nuclei, the motor information has been sent to the third cranial nerve, which is the ocular motor nerve, right? So third cranial nerve is basically ocular motor nerve, and it has a nuclei which is Edinger-Westphal nucleus that is responsible for the dilation or constriction of the pupil, or in order to regulate the amount of light in the eye. So now from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, the information, so the third cranial nerve has sent the information from the Edinger-Westphal nucleus to the ciliary ganglions, right? So the ciliary ganglion is basically the bundle of nerves. So the information has been sent from Edinger-Westphal nucleus to the ciliary ganglion, and ciliary ganglion will transfer the information to the short ciliary nerve, and from short ciliary nerve the information has been sent to the pupillary sphincter muscle, and sphincter muscle gets the parasympathetic innervation, and they will tell the sphincter muscle to constrict or to contract, and what will happen, there will be the constriction of the pupil when the light is shown onto the patient's eye. So let's recall it again, that the light stimulus has been shown. We got a stimulus that is light, right? Then what will happen, that optic nerve carries the light fibers, and it will take the fibers to the optic tract via optic chiasm, right? From the optic tract, the information, this is a third, from optic tract, what will happen, the information will move towards the pretectal nuclei, right? And from pretectal nuclei, the information will move towards the third cranial nerve, and at which structure, it is Edinger-Westphal nuclei, right? The information will move from pretectal nuclei towards third cranial nerve, and at which structure, Edinger-Westphal nucleus. From Edinger-Westphal nucleus, the information, the motor information has been started at the level of pretectal nuclei. Thus, Edinger-Westphal nucleus will allow the parasympathetic nervous system to innervate and will send the information to which structure, to the ciliary ganglion, via preganglionic fibers, right? And the ciliary ganglion will send the information to the only structure, which is sphincter muscle, through which nerve, through short ciliary nerve. This is whole pathway, that the light stimulus that has entered the eye, they will send the light fibers to, from the optic nerve, will move towards the optic tract, then into the pretectal nuclei, till from light stimulus to pretectal nuclei, it is a afferent pathway, right? So afferent pathway, it means that the sensory information has been sent from the sensory organ, which is eye, to the pretectal nuclei, which is in the brain, right? So midbrain. So now from brain, in the brain, from midbrain, the motor information has been started, or you can say the efferent pathway has been started. Motor information is sent from pretectal nuclei to the Edinger-Westphal nuclei, and efferent fibers send information. Now the motor response has been generated from Edinger-Westphal nucleus. Basically it is a part of third cranial nerve, right? So from third cranial nerve, the information has been sent to the ciliary ganglion via preganglionic fibers, and from ciliary ganglions, the information has been sent to the sphincter muscle in the iris, which is in the iris. The information has been sent through which nerve? Short ciliary nerve, and these are the postganglionic fibers, right? Postganglionic mean that after the ganglions. So now what will happen? The sphincter muscle will contract and will allow to constrict the pupil. So pupil get constricted and less amount of light has been entered into the eye. So what happens in the dark? In the dark, the sympathetic nervous system get innervated and there is a dilation of the pupil, so that lot of amount of light get enters the eye while in the dark, because in the dark there is not light. So in order to see more, that pupil gets dilated so that the amount of light which is in the surrounding can enter the eye and patient can see, right? But in the when there is excess amount of light, what happens? That the parasympathetic nervous system get innervated via the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, and the efferent response, or the response is that sphincter muscle get the innervation and it gets constricted, right? So sphincter muscle gets innervation, and what happens that the pupil get constricted. So now just let's summarize the topic, which is pupillary light reflex. When the light enters the eye, right, what happens? That optic nerve gets the information that light has entered, right? So optic nerve carries both information, both fibers. These are light and VL fibers, right? So light fibers are those that will let brain to know that a lot of light is entering or not, so that pupil we can regulate the pupil size, right? So that amount of light can be regulated which is entering the eye. So now from optic nerve, this is the optic nerve, the light fibers get into the optic chiasm, then they get into the optic tract. But what happens at the level of optic tract? At the level of optic tract, the light fibers, the VL fibers, these are the VL fibers, they will move towards the lateral geniculate body, right? But the light fibers which were coming from the optic nerve, they will move posteriorly, they will move towards the midbrain, right? At the midbrain in the pretectal nuclei. So at the level of midbrain, they will move towards the pretectal nuclei, and from pretectal nuclei the motor response is started, and they will send the motor information from the pretectal nuclei to the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, which is in the cranial nerve 3. So the cranial nerve 3 has the nuclei which is Edinger-Westphal nucleus, right? So Edinger-Westphal nucleus will innervate the parasympathetic nervous system, and from Edinger-Westphal nucleus the parasympathetic innervation will move towards the on both sides toward the ciliary ganglions, right? So ciliary ganglions, they will send the motor information to ciliary ganglions, and ciliary ganglions will send the information or innervation to the muscle, right? Signals will move from ciliary ganglion towards the sphincter muscle of the iris to regulate the size of the pupil via short ciliary. This is sphincter muscle in both sides. Sphincter muscle, and from here sphincter muscle, right? The sphincter muscle, these are the ciliary ganglions, and The sphincter muscle will allow the constriction of the pupil and they will send the signal via short ciliary nerve, right? So this is how the pupil gets constricted, right? So this is the pupillary light reflex pathway. There are four ordered neurons: first, second, third, and fourth. One is from eye to pretectal nuclei, right? This, which is the uh, efferent pathway. So first order neuron is the afferent pathway. Second to fourth are the efferent pathway or the motor response, right? So second order neuron is from pretectal nuclei towards the Edinger-Westphal nuclei, and from the Edinger-Westphal nuclei the information is sent to the ciliary ganglions, and from ciliary ganglion the fourth order neuron is from ciliary ganglion the information is sent to the sphincter muscle that sends information. Ciliary ganglion send information to the iris and which structure it is a sphincter muscle, and allows or gives the information or send the order to get constricted. So this is all about the pupillary light reflex.